I don't know if you guys all saw, but this is the video we're going to be talking about today. Keits was asking me to take a look at this before it came out. I didn't realize when exactly it was going to come out related to when I was going to be traveling, and it turned out to be the perfect thing to watch on the flight. It's a very good video. You probably all mostly know Keits. He's worked on a bunch of different fighting games, obviously. Very knowledgeable fighting game connoisseur who likes a lot of different styles of fighting games too, so he has a pretty broad taste. He's also worked on, obviously, Rumbleverse, but like a lot of different other kinds of games. To give you a look at what we're talking about today, it's basically a dive into like, where do you go when you're looking to design and change things on a game? How should you go about it? What kind of information can you trust or not trust, and why? When does a game become balanced? What is game balance? It's a complicated topic, and I'm sure all of you out there, when you think about the games you like, people are always saying things like, these devs are so stupid. Why don't they just balance the game? You're just like, okay, well, what would you change? And then they usually say the most insane things you've ever heard after, usually. Even if you don't agree with everything in here that you hear, it will probably at least make you think about your position on that thing, which I think is important.
Can you answer me this question? How do we know when a game is finally balanced? Let me take you back to the early 2010s. League of Legends is one of the most popular competitive games of all time, and on February 16th, 2011, the developers released a patch containing the following change for Vladimir's Sanguine Pool.
I remember this. It's Zato Break the Law. He goes underground. He's fully invulnerable, 25% move speed bonus, and they decided maybe that's not a good idea. So they removed it, right?
Users rushed online to express how bad this change felt. Vladimir's play rate plummeted, and his win rate also decreased. But here's the twist. The developer had forgotten to submit the files for that particular change, and so it never actually went out to players. Game balance isn't
It's a very common example people use. There are times where a character gets a change, even if it's like very small or minute or not that important, it really affects how people see a character. Caitlyn got a bug fix in 2xKO recently where her trap stays on Oki when you roll against her, which is a nice buff. More importantly, it made people like go back and look for setups for the character quite a bit, and then it made people start playing her a little bit. I think the perception of like, ooh, that seems really good. Ooh, what other stuff can I find? And then realize like, wait a minute, this character's actually got like a bunch of cool shit. That kind of stuff happens constantly with games. Or as another thing, gas leaks. I was talking about this weekend. I don't know if you guys remember, but at Versus Fighting, they had a build available for Strive. And everybody there was talking about how Axel had completely been reworked. There was tons of people reporting that Axel had shorter normals, and people were freaking out about Axel, and it turned out the character had not changed at all.
Game tuning is the act of adjusting a game to achieve a goal. Game tuning is real. Game balance, however, is not an act. It isn't something you do. It's a goal. When players give feedback to developers, they often do so with game balance in mind. Developers tune the game to try to achieve balance. What does game balance as a goal even mean if, as we just learned, simply telling players that something in the game has changed when it has not can so deeply affect their perception of the game's balance?
Yeah.
Game balance isn't real.
He's gonna say this a lot.
Game balance is mostly just vibes. My name is Adam Hart, but you might know me as Keits in the fighting game community. I started playing fighting games when Street Fighter II hit arcades in 1991, and I got the competitive itch around 1997. The lack of nearby tournaments led me to running my own local events, which got me hooked enough to start traveling the country to attend regional and major tournaments.
These are a lot of great
throwbacks. Evolving my own events into the Regional Major Series Ultimate Fighting Game Tournament, or UFGT.
I was at UFGT.
Popular fighting game commentator Ultra David has called one of the most influential tournament series in FGC history. Thanks, bud.
I love that he didn't say the most.
I scored
he said
an
one
Evo
of
Top
the
8
most.
medal in 2011 by getting 7th place in Tatsunoko vs. Capcom Ultimate All-Stars. I was the editor-in-chief of top fighting game website Shoryuken.com for many years, writing about news.
This part's really funny because like I watched it, but I was thinking to myself, dude, I know who you are. And then I realized like, you know, this is probably gonna reach a lot of people who don't know who this guy is, and that makes more sense.
When I created Dive Kick with my wife and friends, I also helped Iron Galaxy Studios with Street Fighter 3 Third Strike Online, Marvel vs. Capcom Origins, and Darkstalkers Resurrection.
I saw more Dog Watch's
I then
video
served
like
as lead combat designer on Killer Instinct, the 2013 version, Season 2.
We read some of his articles on stream before too. He's had some really useful ones.
And then as lead designer on Rumbleverse, on Dive Kick, Killer Instinct, and Rumbleverse, in addition to my many other duties. I was really sick in that video. I was like dying of sickness. During this professional experience, I came to view game balance very differently than I did at the start, and very differently than most of our industry. The proof of this view is in the pudding. Endgame Killer Instinct is still considered by many to be one of the greatest fighting games of all time, with major tournaments still ongoing. A lot of players feel its balance is among the best in the entire genre. I lived through nearly all of the events I'm going to reference, but the ones I was less close to required me to do some research.
I can also give some context
best to represent the facts and feelings of the time, and I want to make it clear that if I use an example in a negative way, that I'm not disparaging the people who made those games, made those design choices, or players who love those games. I want to acknowledge that all of us developers are trying to do the best we can at a very difficult task. We've all made mistakes.
That's a good tag, Infinite.
Me very much included. And I'll probably make more mistakes in the future. All right, let's begin. Has this ever happened to you? You're at the GameStop reading the back of the box for the latest competitive game.
I love this example.
Say 16 playable characters, 12 fighting stages. The gameplay is very fair.
You ask people, I swear this is what they think they want. This is not a thing. I mean, you could make it a thing if you made every character in the game the exact same, like a red guy and a blue guy and a green guy and a yellow guy, and they all have the same moveset or something. But part of the fun of fighting games is that you build a lot of really unique different characters, and naturally they'll be better or worse against each other, and like some characters will have advantages against certain other archetypes and other things like that. It's just how it goes.
I bet you couldn't wait to get home and play the game so you could experience the fairness firsthand.
The fairness.
Let's be real. Fairness is not a selling point. Why do people buy games or download them in the case of games that don't require a purchase? Well, the game looks fun. You can do a bunch of cool stuff in it. Explosions, style, mastery.
Yeah, this
Every
game's
person's
fun.
definition of fun is unique, and the type of fun they seek is their primary motivator when deciding what to play.
I think that's one of the biggest selling points for fighting games too.
Because of FOMO. Their friends or their community are playing and they don't want to be left behind. Gamers will often play a game we don't love just to keep up with our friends. Back before post-launch live service update cycles were the norm, the point of a sale was all that mattered. As a developer, if I could get you to buy your Super Nintendo copy of Street Fighter II, my relationship with you ended right then and there. Wouldn't have mattered to me how long you played the game, or what you thought of the game balance, or the fairness, or any of that. Even if the game was deeply unfair, you'd likely only be playing it against your local friends, and none of you were good enough at the game for that to even really matter.
And I talked about this recently. When it comes to free-to-play games and live service games and games in the new era, it's not just about releasing a box, although a box is a pretty nice thing because then you get the money afterwards, but it's about like the continuous cycle of updates and balance and new content and features, and then reselling them a new bundle of characters and a season of this, and you know, there's a lot of things like this.
Development timelines are only getting longer, and the way consumers interact with competitive games has completely changed. After your initial purchase or download, it's important for developers to keep players playing. If they aren't playing, they won't be around to buy DLC and fill the online matchmaking queues. Players quit because sometimes it's not about the game itself, and there isn't anything you can do. Maybe a new game came out and pulled their attention away. Perhaps real life happened, and that drastically lowered the players.
Fully at the door, they had to go.
But there are reasons that players quit that you can at least somewhat control. If a game becomes more frustrating than fun, players will quit. If a game becomes more thoughtless than engaging, players will quit. That means frustration is a real problem that must be dealt with.
And so is boredom.
Boredom is a real problem that must be dealt with. So developers decide on goals, and then they tinker with their games, and this gets called, rather interchangeably, game tuning or game patching or game balance.
Or game balancing. One thing I talk about with TFT a lot is there's two states that TFT exists in, because the game changes every 2 weeks. When TFT is really badly balanced, the state of the game at the time has very few strong lines, and or the lines that are strong are so strong that of the 8 people in the lobby, like 4 to 5 people are trying to play them at once. People are very frustrated. But when TFT is in like a good spot, the only frustration they have is that they say that they are bored. They're like, this patch, the balance is pretty good because you can play like 10 different comps, but it's just kind of boring right now. Like, I don't know, you just like play all of the good comps and like the game is balanced, so I have nothing to complain about. So it's kind of boring, which is really funny. And yeah, sometimes a game changing too often will frustrate people, but sometimes a game changing too infrequently will frustrate people. Deadlock just had a big update, and the last patch for Deadlock was like 2 or 3 weeks ago, and people are dying for there to be a new update already. They're like, oh my God, my closed alpha, not released, barely available to the public that you still can't get into game that's acting as a live service game, even though it's completely like a test realm, basically, has not had an update in 3 weeks. What the fuck are these devs doing? That game is a fascinating look into like live service models and stuff like that.
But what is a balanced game, really? Is it when every weapon or character is used equally or wins equally? Is it when the players have nothing left to complain about online? Are these things even possible?
Surely.
When we tune a game, we're looking to reach some specific
There won't be even play
outcome.
rates ever also.
So
right?
a problem we're about to run into is that
possibility.
game balance doesn't have just one definition that everyone agrees on. Each part of the audience for your game is looking for something different based on their own ideas of what successful game balance looks like to them.
Yeah, it's important to understand that too.
Most players' primary driver for wanting game balance is the idea of fairness. They think they want a game in which all options are equally viable. They want a game where the tools they use are objectively
do you want that?
but are perceived as fair by others.
Something should probably not be as good as
used
others.
Against them. If the game doesn't feel fair to an individual, that individual gets frustrated. Viewers matter a lot to any modern competitive games ecosystem. And the viewer's primary driver for wanting game balance is variety. They want to tune into live streams and see like a lot of different characters and team compositions and weapons represented to keep things interesting. They want to see lots of play styles interacting with each other.
I mean, that's part of why. Have you guys seen the draft system that they have for League of Legends now? Where like once a character is picked or banned, they are no longer playable. Instead of only engaging with like 20 to 30 champions primarily, they have to go in for like a deeper pool. Each time we load into a game, 10 characters are getting picked, and then like, you know, 5 or 6 or 7 or whatever characters are getting banned. You know, the next game, those characters are all off the table. You have more of the roster available to you. I know 6, 7.
Especially when viewing tournaments. It's a lot less fun when the top 8 character selections look like this. One common strategy is to survey or talk to players to see what it is they want changed. Another common strategy is to use telemetry to look deeply at data that represents real
almost all patch notes talk about these two things,
use rates or win rates to try and make it so that things make sense mathematically. Let's break down each of the traditional methods for making tuning decisions and see where they tend to go wrong. Let's start with telemetry. Data lies.
It sure does.
On the first day of my high school statistics class, our teacher shared with us a quote from early 20th century Austrian psychiatrist Wilhelm Steckel. Statistics is the art of lying.
I thought I was going to say you're only minus if you're a bitch.
That quote really stuck with me. As it turns out, if you're clever, you can use data to prove almost any point you want. Or worse, data can convince you of a false truth.
And also
checking
wildly
telemetry from League of Legends, you might find that the item Mejai's Soul Stealer has an absurdly high win rate.
Situation.
Often close to 80%.
Yeah, I mean, an item like this is like a win more item. You buy this item when you're really ahead. Another example of this in TFT is the egg. You get an egg that does absolutely nothing, and after a bunch of turns of you getting your ass beat, you hatch the egg and get a bunch of cool stuff. You would never take that if you're about to die. The egg is like an augment where you're so ahead that you only would ever take it if your spot is like insanely good. You are Thanos and you win out after. So like the context of it really matters.
This statistic is highly misleading. The item is rarely purchased unless you're already winning, which means the player
you only buy this item
already very likely to win before making the purchase. In order to find guidance within the numbers, you need an extraordinary amount of context.
You also might not even be right about
your character pick rates, and one of the characters is very underrepresented. Do we have any idea why just from the numbers alone? Is it because the character's too weak? Or are they difficult to use? Or do they lose matchups to some of the most common characters? Or are they just kind of ugly?
Yeah, Blanca's been
without the reason
top tier.
This data is effectively useless as a means to understanding what changes to make.
He's one of the least picked characters.
Early on in Overwatch's lifespan, developers saw the use rate of the
support very powerful.
Symmetra was low. So on December 13th, 2016, they overhauled the character. Developer design notes said they wanted to make Symmetra feel more active and give her more meaningful contributions to the team.
There you go.
Overall, Symmetra players liked the changes, but the use rate barely went up. On June 26th, 2018, a year and a half later, Symmetra was reworked a second time. This time moving her from a support role into a damage role. Many Symmetra players lost their fun in this overhaul, and some physically disabled players could no longer play the character at all. The use rate dropped below the original version while simultaneously making the player base upset. Without understanding why the use rate was low to begin with, tuning the character, or worse, reworking them entirely, is like throwing darts while blindfolded after being punched in the face.
There's a lot of reasons. Like Blanca, as in Street Fighter we just talked about, one of the best characters in the game, but he's insanely unpopular just because he's a big ugly fuck. I mean, how do you fix that? Like, I don't think you can, right? He's clearly very, 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 very strong, but he's a big ugly fuck.
Or was it because she was only fun to a certain type of player? And is it even a problem that her pick rate was low, or that the game has niche characters that aren't tournament viable? Without context, data is often worse than useless, and it might lead you to making decisions that remove the fun of some of your players. We should also consider that data is almost never qualitative. Developers that use telemetry to observe the win rates of various characters and weapons will find obvious and large differences when they start to sort that data by player rank.
In Bronze, for example, this is the win rate of champions in League of Legends. And if you go by Diamond Plus, like pretty high rank, like it might change quite a bit. You're not going to see Lee Sin very much at lower levels have this kind of win rate. Graves also, is like very high skill ceiling.
Consider that there are tournament level players who do not play ranked mode often at all.
That's also true.
When they do, they may be much lower ranked than their actual skill level due to their lack of ranked playtime. You must also realize
Angry
that
Bird
not
was the Evo champion. He was like
diamond bracket
right?
Is of equal skill. And within that segment, you may find that certain strategies or characters are barely used at all. Is this a 1v1 game or a team game? Is the character difficult or easy to use? How do we interpret the stats of a character who thrives in online matchmaking, but struggles to place well in full tournament brackets? How close are the game's best character specialists to reaching each character's known potential? And What don't we know about a character's potential? Maybe we can spot a lopsided matchup with data from time to time, which can be really helpful in knowing where to look, but it isn't at all helpful in figuring out what to change. Remember, data will lie to you. Dhalsim, Lily, Honda, Rashid, Blanca, and Kimberly are the bottom 6 characters in terms of use rates and ranked.
I'm shocked by that.
Both across all ranks overall, and when isolating the master rank players. And yet, the characters with the highest win rates in master rank are, in order, Honda, Kimberly, Dhalsim, JP, Blanca, Rashid. And player conceptions of these characters placed in the tier lists bear no relation to any of this.
I mean, look at where Blanca is. Blanca's been really high on like the whole
Rashid are high tier. Honda and Lily are low tier, and ideas about Dhalsim and Kimberly's strength vary wildly. This data could easily lead you to believe that these 6 characters are weak due to underuse, or make you think that they're too strong because of their high win rates. So if we can't really trust data to guide us, we should probably talk to the players in our community, right? Well, unfortunately, even though most
players
of them
also lie a
don't
lot.
need to, players frequently lie too. You've certainly heard the phrase, players don't know what they want. This isn't entirely true in my experience.
They know what they personally want.
There's a relatively well-known clip of me from the wonderful Fight On Killer Instinct documentary by Holdback Block, in which I tell an anecdote about a time when the KI community rallied together and really wanted us to nerf Jago. But nerfing his healing, as they'd requested, would have cut away at the character's core identity and a large part of what makes him unique and fun to play. The community was laser focused on seeing the healing as the problem. Whether this was the true state of the game or not is not relevant. They believed Jago was a problem, and their perception, no matter how flawed, is the reality they live in. So instead of succumbing to the community pressure campaign and nerfing Jago's healing, we took a different approach that allowed us to maintain his fun and unique healing gimmick, while weakening some of the more brainless parts of his kit that allowed him to negate his intended weaknesses too easily. The community cooked us.
He had, you can think about like Ken's Dragon Lash or something as a comparison. He had like a Tatsu that could go up to like basically full screen. The light and medium versions were like insanely hard to punish, and they low crashed. They basically made like a character who's supposed to be like a fireball-y mid-rangey character constantly fly at you with like a safe Tatsu. That's basically what the character was doing.
This wasn't the change they asked for and wouldn't make a difference. But a few weeks after that, complaining about
he did
Jago
not need to be doing all that though.
Players knew they wanted a weaker Jago. It's just that their idea of how to do it would have had way worse knockdown effects on the game and Jago player base than what we landed on. A very small number of Jago players were unable to adapt to the changes that we did end up going with, and they either switched characters.
It also made him
or
much
quit
worse,
the game
and then
entirely.
they buffed him later.
That sucks. But it's a natural part of the tuning process. You can't please
but that's how these
everyone.
Things go.
But you can
Sometimes
limit
you gotta make some changes. You
blowback
can't let him wind kick across the
if you're
fucking
thoughtful.
screen.
Did he even need to be nerfed in the first place? Believe it or not, it doesn't actually matter. Ultimately, players were frustrated, and something had to be done about that. Most of your user base will lie to you, but I'll state again, they usually don't mean to. Even among the most well-meaning users, you'll find that the overwhelming majority of them struggle to see the big picture or consider the viewpoints of others. Their idea of a better game is very commonly one in which they, with their character or weapon of choice, can win more easily.
Yep, I bring up this example a lot, but like when I was trying some of the changes they had for KI as an example, I like found this like play pattern with Maya that was like so miserable that I like remember going to them and being like, yo, watch how I play the game. Doesn't this just seem awful? Like this has probably got to go, right? And then they nerfed my character. They made a change that made the character weaker, but more interesting. But the thing is like most people, when they try something like that and their character's doing some messed up shit, they're like, that's not hype. Let my character do all this shit. And then also fuck everybody else who's having fun. It's very easy to fixate on what is seemingly broken about other characters in comparison to yours, but hard to give good feedback holistically, I think, a lot of times. It's very hard to not think in a vacuum.
Misled by data, sure, but they can even more easily be misled by players. Data can be convincing, but players can be very, very loud and hard to ignore.
It's just JM explaining why Sasquatch is good.
Not possible to know what you don't currently know. But that won't stop players from insisting that their perspective is the truth. After all, to them, it currently is, but their perspective can shift quickly. Influencer types can, often without even meaning to, construct completely false narratives that large swaths of your user base will bandwagon on and help amplify.
That's
Suddenly,
also true.
The desires or misinformation of just one popular player
usually
can start to sound
unintentionally
like
as well.
hundreds or thousands of people who all agree about what the problem is and how to fix it.
I talk about this a lot.
is a major issue that puts a lot of social pressure on devs.
This is why I didn't make tier lists for a long time, as an example. I urge you so strongly, no matter who you're watching, especially me, to try and interpret things yourself. Think about it yourself and like find out if what you're actually feeling and thinking is truly the same as the stuff you're saying.
Early on, after the launch of Injustice 2 in May of 2017, generational talent Sonic Fox won nearly every tournament they attended using Captain Cold.
The only Captain Cold player.
Thought was on the weaker end of the roster. Sonic Fox's dominant win streak resulted in a community that was forced to reassess the actual strength of the character, and eventually developers that nerfed the character despite Sonic Fox's insistence that Captain Cold was indeed weak and just counterpicked certain characters well. But you don't even have to go on a dominant winning streak to change.
That was the end of Captain Cold.
After Super Street Fighter 4 launched in April of 2010, right before tournament season really kicked off,
Sonic Fox is the only Captain Cold player.
To assess the power levels of the 10 new characters that were added to the roster. Going into EVO 2010 on July 9th, the widespread sentiment among top players was that Adon was among the weaker characters added to the game.
Yeah, it's hard to know, right?
5th place out of about 1,700 players.
Missed the dive kick timing, by the way, because Adon got up faster.
Largest open bracket tournament we had seen to date.
Probably didn't know.
Totally upending how we had viewed the character for months without a single balance change.
Jaguar kick. Sometimes it's just like that. It's the same shit with you, Idom, and Laura, right? Like, there was no Laura players.
Melee has a very long and well-documented history of community agreed-upon tier lists.
And sometimes it is just the character is actually good and no one else plays them.
By
like
all
Blanco.
Conventional wisdom,
like Blanco's clearly good, but no one plays them.
Best character in the game.
It's just like meta.
In a roster of 26.
There's a bunch of other Japanese players that are good and stuff, and other people who play characters is good, but like
tournament scene
nobody has the results with Yoshi compared to Mena, right?
Yoshi's rank went from 21st to 12th. From 2013 to 2015, and after AMSA's win at Big House 10 in October of 2022, arguably the hardest Melee major of all time, Yoshi now sits as the 10th best character in the game on community tier lists.
That's crazy.
Despite nothing about the game changing, again, we simply cannot know what we do not know.
In every scenario, it's impossible to know, especially with games now, which patch so frequently. The like true power level of every character is very tough to tell, particularly because like a lot of characters don't get explored to the full extent. Like right now, if some character was like truly the best, but all of the top 300 or 400 or 500 players in the world are not exploring them truly, then it's hard to know, right? Because most of them already think that some other character is better. Like things are constantly changing.
It's incredibly hard, maybe impossible as a developer, to know what situation you're actually in and guess right. Is the character weak or strong? Without many years of evidence, you'll have to make an assumption. You'll be right sometimes, and you'll be wrong other times, and it's a huge part of why tuning a competitive game is so difficult. We can be extremely confident that we know everything about the state of a game when we, in fact, are only seeing a small part of the big picture. So we can't rely on data or players for guidance. But what about the goals we'd set out to achieve in the first place? Goal number 1, a favorite goal of players, is fairness. Fairness should not and cannot ever be a goal, because no two players can ever universally agree on what is fair.
Yeah.
It's an emotional metric that changes by the minute depending on who you ask, the results of their latest ranked match, what salty player showed up on their social media algorithm that day.
Yep.
It is simply not an achievable goal. Remember, as a developer, you also don't know what you don't know, and you are just as easy to manipulate as the players are.
It's true.
Remember that League of Legends example from the start of the video about Vladimir Sanguine Pool? That wasn't the only time something like that happened in League. When the champion Riven was released, she was viewed by the community as weak. Riot devs apparently agreed and hotfixed in some buffs for the character. The character's play rate spiked and the feedback was very positive. Players reported how good the buffs felt and what a difference they made, but the hotfix hadn't actually gone live yet.
Yep.
The character was unchanged. Game balance is mostly vibes. Only way to tune your game into a state in which no player is complaining is to make them all quit. Goal number 2. My favorite goal of viewers is
variety. Yeah, and when it comes to like placebos, sometimes devs will make like very small adjustments, not even because they think the character necessarily needs the buff, but because it will get more people to try the character and then realize the power of the character. That kind of stuff happens constantly as well.
But variety is not the result of mathematical balance or fairness. It's the result of enabling diverse player expression. Each individual player has their own playstyle and their own view on what aspects of your game or characters are fun. Some players want to play it as safe as possible and focus on reactions with a low risk, low reward strategy. Other players may want to gamble, taking big bets and trying to get maximum rewards. And everything in between those two extremes exists as well. If a character is harder to learn and pilot and optimize, should that character be equal in theoretical power output with a character that's trivial to learn and pilot and optimize? Or, to put it more plainly, One character's low risk, high reward. Which character will most players choose? What I've observed over the years is that when a game is tuned toward a more flat mathematical balance, playstyles start to converge. Players gravitate towards one of two types of characters. They'll either play the characters that are easiest to win with, thus lowering their risk, or they'll play the characters that look the coolest or sexiest, because the vibes matter a lot to us. And watch out if your easy characters are also your coolest ones. We won't often achieve tournament variety by flattening win rate and use rates, because doing so flattens out the number of reasons different players gravitate toward different characters or play patterns. Despite not being widely considered to have the most balanced roster, the original version of Guilty Gear Xrd Sign would frequently see large variety of characters in tournament top 8s, because the characters are so different and diverse that they appeal strongly to different player types. Conversely, in the Tekken series, many of the characters share variations of the same game plan and have similar risk-reward values. This is why when Tekken misses the mark, it's much more common to see something like 4 Bobs in a Tekken 6 top 8, like at EVO 2011, or 6 Leroys in a Tekken 7 top 8, like at EVO Japan in 2020.
It's the reason why, like, you're watching Ulsan versus Atif and they're playing Dragunov at the finals or something like that, right? Versus other games. Like, the thing about Guilty Gear is, like, the characters are so different in playstyle and also time investment to master. Whereas in Tekken, and it's the same thing for like SNK games generally, who are people picking, right? They're picking characters who are the best within the context of the system at the time, because if you can play Tekken, you can pick up the best characters in Tekken if you're the highest level. Versus if you're playing a game like Guilty Gear, it's a lot harder to swap. Like, how many people are swapping to Happy Chaos despite him having a fucking block infinite, right? Like, no one swapped.
And we did, in fact, end up seeing this in motion at the launch of Guilty Gear Strive, which had top 8s dominated by many appearances of Soul Bad Guy, a character boasting the trifecta of easy to use, powerful, and super cool. Because at launch, Strive was more simple, and many of the characters felt more samey than in past iterations of the franchise. Players gravitated towards this very easy and powerful badass. Down the line, as new mechanics and extremely unique characters were added to the roster, tournament variety improved a great deal. As a goal, variety is an admirable and understandable one. It's actually measurable with telemetry or by looking at tournament results.
I think that's Echo also.
And if you aren't hitting a good level of variety, your player base will absolutely let you know. Variety is a symptom of a healthy game ecosystem, not the result of a mathematically balanced game. And finally, the third goal that we skipped over at the beginning, the only real and true goal worth pursuing with game tuning efforts: player retention, making your existing players want to play more, or at a bare minimum, preventing them from quitting. Fairness is a cute idea. Variety is nice to have if you can get it, but if players aren't playing, there isn't any point to anything you might change in your game. We need to A, reduce player frustration, B, increase and reinforce thoughtful play patterns that result in engagement, and C, do all of that while trying to enable and maintain a high level of diverse player expression. Easy, right? Here's my approach to game tuning with those goals in mind. They might work for you or they might not. My goal is to share with you what I've learned so that you can use the parts that make sense for you and your project. To players watching this, I hope you take away an improved vocabulary about game tuning and a wider view of what the goals of game tuning really are.
And also, what did Guilty Gear post recently? They said, if you are being big meanie faces about our games and saying mean shit, we're gonna block you and not listen to you. You know, when it comes to giving feedback and thinking about things, you gotta be kind and understanding about what everybody's trying to do here.
The classical approach of using data as a metric to measure the success of your tuning efforts is what I'll call tuning for flatness. But when tuning, you need to approach the problem less like a banker balancing the books and more like a beekeeper making sure that the hive is healthy and thriving. Imagine that you're responsible for balancing the environment of Earth, and you get a data report and discover that there are 20 quadrillion ants on the planet, but only 3 trillion trees. If you believe this is an imbalance, you aren't in the right mindset to tune a competitive game. A version of Earth with 20 quadrillion trees would have no space at all for anyone to exist. A version with only 3 trillion ants is going to cause serious ecological disasters as the food chain collapses. Good game tuning has a lot more in common with musical composition than it does hard science. It requires harmonious choices, purposeful and intentful imbalance of volume and frequency and tempo to achieve the desired emotional effect. All aspects of your game need to harmonize and come together to be stronger than the sum of all of its parts. I call this tuning for harmony. Your job is to lead players emotionally where you'd like them to go, not follow the player's whims or manipulate.
Why did he have that Mad Max gameplay sitting there?
A game that is tuned for harmony is trying to achieve retention by creating a game state in which the highest number of players can each have their own unique brand of fun, express themselves, and stay engaged. Mathematical imbalance in your telemetry is not seen as a problem under this lens. It could be a symptom of a problem sometimes, but it could just as well be that the imbalance actually makes the whole stronger.
If you have characters that are really unique and different and cool, they're not going to get picked as much as Soul fucking Bad Guy, because he's the guy on the front of the game, and he's very popular, and he's very cool and neat. And also the point earlier about ease of use versus complex game plans. People talk a lot about grapplers as an example, and zoners. They're sharp archetypes that you have to deal with. I mean, when you consider balancing those kinds of characters, there's also concessions you have to make there often too, right?
First, you're going to need to put someone on your team in charge of game tuning. And that person needs to be able to play at a high enough level to feel the real game. They don't have to be tournament champions or the best in the world, but they should be strong enough to play alongside players of that caliber. Number one, they can't play in tournaments.
That's
so they
a good
can't
rule
be selfish about tuning.
Devs.
They can feel free to compete in other games to scratch that itch. Number two, they shouldn't even have a main character or weapon. And they should spend their playtime using the characters or weapons the community think are the weakest, and against strong players using the characters or weapons people think are the most offending to see if they even agree. They should try to think of the game as a whole, play the whole roster relatively well, and understand what aspects of each character are the most core to their identity and fun factor.
Even for me as a commentator, if I was trying to compete, I would be playing the sweatiest best team for me and like playing a certain way. But I try to like play the game to learn the cast really well and like get a feel for where all the characters are.
A player who say only uses grapplers or only uses shotguns and can't get out of their comfort zone is going to struggle in this role. They should try to understand the feelings of players at various skill levels and keep each bracket of players in mind when tuning. You don't tune to give weaker players a chance against more experienced players, but you do need to tune against inexperienced players' unique frustrations if you want to retain them. This person is your lantern in a dark cave. Without them, you'll be lost, and you'll spend most of your time guessing your way back to the light. Next, listen to your players. Players lie, but you still need to hear them. Players are often right about the symptoms, even if they don't understand the best ways to fix the problems.
Yep.
Find a few players who love your game and have a better big picture sense than most, and talk to them a lot. These players are your canary in the coal mine. Don't take what they say at face value, always think critically, but a discussion with these key people can lead you to the right choices much more quickly and accurately.
My hair is so
keep
long.
You from making major mistakes. On KI, of the hundreds of players I spoke to, I trusted exactly 2 to give me the kind of feedback that helped me validate or make tuning decisions, and maybe 10 more to give me thoughts that were helpful. I learned who was who by chatting with the players a lot and being observant.
Let's use an example we all know. Leffen says the most insane shit of all time constantly. That being said, he's very good at the game, and he plays a lot of different characters, and he has like a good sense of where their power is and isn't. And if you listen to him talk about the game, and then turn it into like actual feedback about the power level of thing, he does occasionally suggest things that are good or have problems or says insane shit, and then you turn it into like, well, actually what he's trying to say is this. Some people are better at that than others, are very thoughtful about their stuff that they say, or like they're not too ruffled too easily. You might have to like poke someone who's a little less tolerant to get like actual good feedback about what needs to change or not change too. You know, it's like both. You got to hear people out and then use your own brain to like interpret what's going on and then figure out if it's actually true or not. You got to become a translator of what players say and their feelings on things. And some people like or dislike certain types of things more than others.
As you get information from telemetry and player sentiment reports, filter it and test against it rigorously. It's critical that you do not knee-jerk react to the things you hear, and it can be extremely difficult not to when influencer groupthink pressure campaigns arrive at your doorstep. You need to be measured enough to know when a problem is being overblown or a solution that works for your game has not yet been found.
When it comes to patches, there's devs that I've talked to and stuff where they're like, yeah, at the time everybody was like really frustrated about this thing, but like our intuition was that it wasn't going to be that big of a problem by X time, so we didn't make like super aggressive changes against it until then. And then it turned out that people by then were mad at like a completely different thing that we didn't preempt, but we're happy we didn't nerf this other thing that they were mad at then. And like, you know, it's just so complicated. When a game comes out, like Marvel 3 came out, everybody thought Wesker was insanely broken, and it turned out that he was insanely mid, as an example. And like no one knew how broken Virgil was until some Japanese player like came up with all this stuff, and then someone was like, wait, but you could just do that as an anchor instead. And then everybody developed all this tech, and Shady K was doing, and you know, all that kind of stuff. Yeah, when Street Fighter 6 came out, week 1, everybody thought Manon was broken. I say everybody, but it was mostly just people losing to IDOM. I mean, I remember playing week 1 Marissa in Street Fighter 6 and thinking like, this character is not going to stay that good. So even I knew then. But if you had balanced Street Fighter 6 based on what everybody thought in the first week, it would have been very different than now, right? Where they land 4 weeks later might be different, and you may have locked in your patch changes like 6 weeks before that, and like it's very complicated. There's a lot going on.
As an example, in Killer Instinct and Rumbleverse, I found that an average of 3 to 4 weeks worked for non-catastrophic issues based on those games' audiences and goals. For catastrophic issues, every day counts. During development, before you even have players, you need to spend time and energy on features that will let you deploy quick game tuning changes without full and expensive title updates.
Yeah.
Once your game is out, stay alert for mega frustrators. Things in the game that are so far out of bounds that players won't tolerate them until your next major patch. There's a lot of competition for players' attention, so don't give them an excuse to quit and play something else. Early on in Rumbleverse, players discovered a bug when double bouncing using a stop sign weapon that allowed them to safely drop a city block-sized instant kill damage zone with 0 counterplay. Thanks to our hotfix system, we were able to get a fix deployed to players in a few days instead of the 5 weeks it would have taken if we had to wait for our next major patch, ensuring that most of the frustrated players retained. Nailing this built trust between us and the players, so that if something like that ever happened again, they'd help calm each other down knowing that we'd likely fix it quickly. You should avoid focusing on individual character versus character or team comp versus team comp matchup tuning. Conceptually, these things are big buckets of variables, and it's way too easy to get lost and cause unexpected knockdown effects in other areas of your game if you take on something so broad. You should instead spend time on much smaller and clearer details.
If you're like, oh man, poor Dalsum Zangief, like Zangief can't do anything, let's make him beat Dalsum. If Zangief beats Dalsum, who does he lose to? What kind of monster are you creating? I did see people this patch of Strive who are like, you know, it's kind of crazy that Axel beats Potemkin so badly. This is like crazy. Why would they do this? And I'm like, you don't know the world you've been living in.
You also need to avoid overreacting or reacting too quickly if the severity of the issue isn't high. So after all that, what exactly is my method? First, I start by thinking about the big picture of risk versus reward across the entire game. Any new character or move you put in the game has to match this framework that you've conceptualized. Think about headshots and shooters. If you aim for the body and you miss left or right, you hit the arms. If you miss low, you hit the legs. If you miss high, you might get a headshot. Your risk of missing when aiming for the body is at its lowest, and the reward is usually standard damage. If you aim for the head and you miss low, you hit the body and you get standard damage. But if you miss left, right, or high, you don't hit the target at all and deal no damage. The reward for a headshot is vastly increased damage output if you can land it. The risk reward of headshots makes logical and practical sense. This is a good example of an extremely common and effective risk reward system that breeds thoughtful play, as both aiming for the body or head are effective, but carry different levels of risk and reward that change as you switch weapons, distances, fight targets that move at different speeds, or even increase your own skill level. Now let's look at a risk reward problem. Take, for example, Ultimate Marvel vs. Capcom 3. If you use Magneto's heavy attack, which is slower and harder to land to start your combo damage will be high enough to kill even the sturdiest characters in the game.
Dude, what a cool combo.
However, if you start your combo with a quick light attack that comes out fast and hits low, and it's one of the easiest moves in the game to land, your combo damage will still be high enough to kill even the sturdiest characters in the game. The lower and higher risk options both have the same reward. Skilled players will almost unanimously gravitate towards using low risk attacks since the outcome is the same no matter what. In Guilty Gear Strive, using a quick punch or kick attack has less combo options and scales the combo's damage and hit stun duration more harshly. Using a slower slash or heavy slash attack gives you the highest damage combo starters and lets you combo more generously. The lower risk option here has a lower reward. This gives players a reason to use more of their options in various situations.
I actually think Keits probably prefers Marvel 3 to Guilty Gear Strive by quite a bit if I had to guess.
In KI, every character has a 5-frame quick attack, but not every character has the same range or properties on their quickest attack. Not all of them get the same level of reward.
Ripter.
Is this a problem? If the designers made these choices randomly, it might very well be. But if you deliberately design weaknesses into the character kits to compensate for their more extreme strengths, which is usually where their identity and fun lie, it could be perfectly okay to have a character whose quickest attack has poor range, or one that can't be rapid fire cancelled, or one that can only successfully combo into one specific unsafe opener special move. Context is everything. Equality will flatline the playstyles. Consider the characters Saberwolf, who is one of the easiest characters to play as, and Arya, who is the most difficult character in the game to play as. As I mentioned before, high difficulty is a risk, as the player has way more mistakes they can conceivably make in a match, and their options may be much more difficult to optimize. In a game tuned for flatness, perhaps Saberwolf and Arya should have a similar potential at top levels of play. But when balancing for harmony, we must acknowledge that Arya's high difficulty means she should have a higher number of top-level advantages than other characters. If an easier character could match her potential, almost no one would invest time into the character.
She is very good, and that's why people play her.
Absolutely ruin a game. Or imbalance could create harmony. Without the imbalance of high-risk, high-reward characters living alongside low-risk, low-reward characters, player identity gets stifled. Low or no-risk tactics that have high rewards, such as safe jumps in fighting games, can be simultaneously boring for the attacker and very frustrating for the defender. Try to use this line of thinking to identify outliers, and then study the characters or situations these outliers belong to so you can understand if they're a problem or not. Build in deliberate strengths and weaknesses, and commit to them. The developer responsible for game tuning is going to need a strong vision, a clear understanding of their target audience, and the ability to step back and try to feel all of this from a distance and see the big picture.
People are looking for different things in what they want to play. If the best thing is the easiest thing, it's the most straightforward thing, people are going to play it. If Sea Viper is the best character in Street Fighter 6, she will still not be as popular as Ryu and Ken and Akuma, and like those characters will be popular anyway. It's just that it is what it is, you know?
Some frustration is okay, and it can even be good for your game, so long as frustration doesn't overtake fun for your target audience. Imagine leaping off a building in a game with fall damage versus one without. The game without fall damage is definitely less frustrating, but it also lacks the adrenaline rush of attempting the leap and finding a way to land safely despite the danger. Neither of these approaches are wrong. It's just that each better suits a different audience. When an individual's frustration outweighs their fun, they quit. In Zelda Breath of the Wild, the fun is in exploring and traversing this massive, handcrafted world, solving puzzles, getting into battles, and then you have to interact with the very frustrating menus to cook food and manage your inventory, and then all of your weapons break. Some parts of the game are fun, and some parts are frustrating. They pull on each other within me to help me decide if I should keep playing or quit. This scale represents me, not the game itself. The scale is not about truth, it's about my relationship with the game.
I think with Breath of the Wild, that shit's gotta be one of the most like divisive topics of all time. Like the weapons breaking or not is very, very common.
I'll place weights that represent my personal enjoyment from exploration, puzzles, and combat on the left side, and so it moves down. Fun weighs more. And now I'll place weights that represent my own personal frustration from having to cook or navigate menus, or when my weapons break. Maybe the weight of your personal frustration from, say, weapons breaking is less than mine. As you can see, the total weight of my fun in Breath of the Wild is heavier than the total weight of my frustrations. If we make the cooking interface a little better, the weight of my total frustration lowers, but the weight of my fun doesn't increase, because improving the cooking interface doesn't improve the exploration. It does improve my overall relationship with the game. Even in competitive games, some frustration is totally unrelated to gameplay aspects of the product, like if it takes you 3 minutes to simply log into the game and another 8 minutes to find a match. But on the gameplay side of competitive games, this concept is a series of landmines, because it is extremely common that one player's fun is exactly the other player's frustration.
Yeah.
The more fun you let a player have, the more frustrated their opponent on the receiving end of that fun is likely to be. If I make something less frustrating for the victim, it may reduce fun for the attacker. It's very often zero-sum. In this example, this individual's frustration about being hit wasn't very high in the first place, and didn't change when combos got shorter. But because they enjoyed doing long combos so much, the weight of their fun dropped, suddenly causing frustration to outweigh the fun for them. This change may have drastically reduced the frustration for another player and improved their personal scale, while causing this particular player to consider quitting.
I like doing cool, executionally challenging, interesting combos. The more you make combos like very simple and not cool and not interesting, the less I'm gonna be like, ooh, and want to play stuff, and the more I'm gonna be like, because like everybody gets hit and is like, oh my god, when is this combo gonna end? I'm getting hit by such a long combo. Even when they play Street Fighter, everybody's always pissed when they get hit, but I like doing long, cool combos. If they're gone, then what am I gonna do? I'm still gonna get hit.
In the gameplay of competitive games, you generally can't make things universally better for everyone. Because of this, you need to communicate heavily with and keep an eye on your community to see frustration trends appearing. Some frustrations can be healthy for a game. Remember, this is an ecosystem. High highs are rarely possible without low lows. We often only make game tuning decisions around risk and reward with top level play in mind. We do this because factually, mid and lower level players are not able to observe the whole of the known game yet, and are extremely unlikely to notice the risk reward tuning that we do. But when tuning against frustration, we need to consider all levels of play.
For sure.
In Killer Instinct, Gargos is a portal punch move, a tracking projectile that can start a ranged combo. This move was easier to deal with at higher levels of play. It had counterplay, and it fit the character's kit really well. But at mid to low levels of play, this move became a mega frustrator.
Yeah.
The answers to it, while available and plentiful, were not apparent enough at those levels of play, and the move was causing a number of players to threaten to quit. We tested against this claim as best as we could, and ultimately agreed that this move had crossed the line for that level of play. We adjusted the move quite a few times to find a spot that still worked for top level play, but was much less frustrating at other levels of play. There is a limit to how weak we were willing to make this move. After a certain point, we had to let the community know that we were not taking the move out of the game, and that if they were struggling to deal with this version of the move, they'd need to practice.
Yeah.
Our goal isn't to solve the problem for everyone, but to reach a compromise that still might ask some players to overcome their frustrations. If you show your community that you're listening and they believe in you, they will invest effort on their side more readily to overcome challenges and minor frustrations. Speaking of brain dead stuff, we need to prevent people from getting bored.
Yeah.
You're spending a lot of time not making meaningful decisions. Even if the base actions feel great and have great feedback, you'll eventually get bored.
Gargos is a character who high level players, if you played him, he's really fun, interesting. He's got a lot going on. He's a complicated, interesting character. There is a point where like if new players just can't beat certain strategies, it's like DI in Street Fighter. Like new players will complain about DI. And like, yeah, it is very good and annoying to deal with when you're new, but like eventually you'll learn to deal with it. And like Shiva Stomp in Mortal Kombat, which they killed her. They beat her ass because of that AT&T event. But like if a character is just really, 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 really frustrating for new players, you got to take a look at it. But it's the same thing with high level play too. And almost every slam is like that too, where there's like stuff that like is really powerful at low levels, and then they have to go over like how to beat it, and then it will go down in effectiveness as their players improve and are not new players anymore. And I think those kinds of moves are usually pretty bad in general for like the game to have. It's like a move that's useless at a high level and very frustrating for new players. Like that move is in a tough space design wise anyway.
Remember our Rumbleverse stop sign nuke example?
This thing was so fucked up. This
technique was extremely frustrating to get hit by, but was super fun and funny to do to people at first. But once you mastered the movement needed to do it, which to be honest wasn't very hard at all, it became a thoughtless way to play. So even the people using and abusing the technique were experiencing disengagement due to the degenerate play pattern the stop sign nuke represented. Long combos or block strings in fighting games with zero or infrequent defensive mechanics can also cause a lot of disengagement. Players across many genres do not respond well to losing control of their character. My own small-scale studies show players starting to disengage and have frustration spikes on average between the 6 and 8 second marks of losing control of their character. Obviously, some individuals, especially in the FGC, have an extreme tolerance to this and can routinely sit through repetitive 40-second long combos on the receiving end.
Yep.
This, in my experience,
it's too long.
Is not a critical mass of people. I'm not saying you should never make a game with long combos. I'm just suggesting that you need to understand the kind of audience you're trying to retain. And if the long combos do exist, find ways to make them more varied and or less frequent.
Or more
Disengaged
interactable.
Players on defense are very likely to quit, but disengaged players on offense are, believe it or not, also likely to quit. Different types of game balance attract and repel different types of audiences, and different audiences self-select into different types of games and game balance outcomes. Let's look at 3 example scales. In the first, developers worked very hard to sand off every frustration they could. Even though the weight of the frustration side is light, so is the weight of the fun side of the scale.
Yeah.
This can result in even very minor frustrations feeling oversized, and make spending time with the game feel not worth it because the fun it delivers is sterile or bland.
This is how I feel. I like high power level, interesting games, but a lot of versus games are like this where the fun of the game is like insanely big, but the frustration is also the most. But it's not that high of a frustration factor to me because they're so fast and so snappy and so fun that it goes away quickly. I was talking this weekend to Heapski about playing Marvel 3, and Toki brought up Firebrand Unblockables, and he was saying, I have played in tournament in 2 games, right? One where I get Firebrand Unblockable and looped in the corner and stuck in like 50-second long combos, and the other one where I got throw loop to death. Only one of those games did that interaction make me want to quit, and it wasn't the Firebrand Unblockable. We all have different tolerances for the things that we like or dislike, and to me, yeah, like much higher power level for characters and like cool, fun, interesting things. Even if the frustration of getting hit by stuff is high, like those games tend to be so fast and scrappy, you get back into things quickly, and like you always feel so powerful that you're just like cool with it. But for some people, getting throw looped is an offense that they cannot tolerate. But for a lot of other people, the mix of being a mid or a throw is far more up their alley than like getting a blockable or left righted or overhead low left right. throw, command grab, mixed, you know.
In the second scale, developers didn't really care about frustrators, so this theoretical game has a very high frustration weight, but it also has a very high fun weight. You'll notice that the ratio of the scale is similar to the first, but the actual weight of each side matters a great deal. While the audience may be smaller in this type of game, the immense weight of the fun side of the scale is going to have the players who can deal with the high level of frustration calling this a favorite game. Some players call these kinds of games kusoge, Japanese slang for shitty game. They say it lovingly and disparagingly all at once. In the final scale, which is probably the ideal goal for developers for most projects, frustrations were addressed carefully in ways that, while inevitably did lower the weight of the fun side a bit, didn't overdo it. That's why it's so important to know your audience. None of these three results are wrong or bad. They just serve different people. There will be people outside of your target audience who will try your game, and the majority of these people are unretainable.
Yeah.
In this example, our core audience member on the left is happy, but our player from outside the core group on the right is having less fun, because this isn't their usual kind of game, and their unfamiliarity adds even more frustration. If the weight of their frustration is so high that reducing some of it still leaves their frustration outweighing their fun, the game just isn't for them.
That's okay.
But if you insist on trying to reduce the weight of their frustration, in this example, we made changes that made the game less frustrating for people outside the core audience by changing things in the game that were not frustrating at all to the core users. The result of that was a loss of fun for the core players. We failed to make enough of a dent to retain people outside the core group, and now we've put a portion of our core audience at risk of quitting too. Not every edge needs softening. You may also encounter players who, despite loving your game and thinking that it's relatively well-tuned, are becoming bored from repetition. At this time, you'll have to weigh the reward of doing some kind of tuning shakeup to get people re-engaged, against the risk of that action frustrating a vocal and influential part of your community. The Street Fighter VI community is going through this right now as of filming in early 2026. Many in the community feel the game is well-tuned, but still want a big shakeup anyway because they are becoming bored.
Game's in a good spot, clearly, but like every single person basically is like, listen, it hasn't changed in so long.
And finally, we get back to play pattern optimization. Optimization is the enemy.
Hats.
I'm not talking about software performance here. I'm talking about players optimizing their gameplay choices to minimize risk and maximize reward. You need to make a game where the right answers are much more obscured, or better yet, much more plentiful. You want a game where surprise and discovery can continue for as long as possible post-launch. Ultimate Marvel vs. Capcom 3's fast-paced, neutral, and rapid decision-making is one of the best parts of the game and has lots of surprises and memorable moments even 15 years later. But when I land a hit with virtually any attack, it becomes very clear what I should do. I should perform my very long combo with little to no reason for variation and kill your character. This optimal play gives me maximal reward with minimum decision making, so long as I can execute, and takes up a large portion of the time spent playing during any match. During the combo, a skilled attacker is only engaged at the start as they try to stabilize the opponent and decide if they need to burn X Factor or any meter. The defender should try to engage the entire time no matter how long the combo, in case the combo drops on accident or a reset is attempted. But focusing for that long without meaningful decisions to make is exhausting. Street Fighter VI steps it up by obscuring optimal combos quite a bit better than Marvel vs. Capcom 3. When you score a hit, the starter you used can matter a lot more. You need to look at screen position, your drive meter, your opponent's drive meter, your health, your opponent's health, what round it is, your own super meter conditions to make sure you can decide how to best optimize what combo to do.
As an example, that's like drive rush, punish counter, or counter hit jab versus drive rush, punish counter jab versus drive rush jab versus regular hit jab versus counter hit jab versus punish counter jab. Those are all different states.
This game is much harder to optimize, but ultimately it can be done. Top level play in Street Fighter VI after a while has virtually every player using the same combos in similar situations once those players are fluent enough in the game to know the optimal answer in each situation. Though you do see some player expression variation, with some high-risk players spending more drive meter to burn themselves out on purpose more frequently, while others are more conservative with their gauge if the combo isn't going to kill or checkmate. Street Fighter VI makes the right answers more plentiful, and they take longer for players to optimize because there are so many variables. Ideally, you want to make a game where, instead of the right answers being difficult but ultimately possible to optimize, players are presented with a variety of correct answers, each representing their own risk-reward values. So instead of a community working together to solve the game like a puzzle, after which conformity of playstyle begins to occur, players will instead focus on making the choices that best fit their own personalities. Imagine a series of possible combos all starting from the same hit confirm. Each does more damage than the last, but is also harder to execute than the last. It isn't a bad way to start, but at top levels of play where execution starts to become irrelevant, what you'll get is a push towards optimization and conformity instead of expression and variety. Trying to create a system in which different combo routes give expressly different outcomes and have their own advantages and disadvantages beyond executional requirements will ensure that players can play their own way. Variety isn't just in character or weapon selection, it's also found within the playstyles of the people who use the same characters or weapons if your game is harmonizing correctly. Harmony is not about making it hard for players to find the right answer. It's about giving them many right answers and letting each player lean towards their own favorites. All things should be done with intent. If someone asks me why I made a recent design decision and my answer is, I don't know, then I messed up. I may be forced to make a suboptimal decision from time to time due to various circumstances beyond my control, but I should still be able to clearly express why the decision was made. This means your patch notes need to communicate both what you're doing and why you're doing it. Even if players disagree with your reasoning, they should be able to see clear intent. I originally wrote a version of this talk that you're watching now back in 2019. And in the time between then and now, I'm very happy to report that developers across all the games that I play and watch have improved drastically in the area of patch notes. Keep it up. Thank you.
When it comes to Street Fighter, they do list why they make changes. It's just like they don't make severe changes in the game. It's probably because they don't think they need to. They probably think the game is in a good spot and they don't really want to make changes for the sake of making change. It's a tough spot to be in because like if the audience has a desire to see the game change, then like what do you want to do?
Remember, the process is not hear about the problem followed by fix the problem. Process needs to be hear about the problem, investigate, and decide if you even agree it's a real problem. Use everything you've learned to find a solution to the problem that weighs all of the other problems that need solving, and how that solve might hurt or destabilize other parts of the game and the audience. And then communicate with your players. I believe a balanced roster isn't one where every character has an equal shot at winning, but it's one where there's a little something for every type of player within your core audience. I once heard a player ask why developers couldn't just balance a game before it came out. And as I hope you understand by now, that would be an impossible task because the audience, who will eventually decide what balance even means to them, haven't even touched a game yet. If you're in charge of tuning a competitive game, you should do what works for you and your community. If you really believe in tuning for flatness or whatever method you use, and it's working for your team, and you're achieving your goals, that's rad. If you want to try some or all of my methods, that's cool too. I'll make myself available for consulting with folks in the industry who do this kind of work if people want that. Just hit me up on Blue Sky or wherever and we can work something out. Remember that game balance isn't real. It's not a hard, objective thing that we can measure and take scientific actions to fix. In reality, it's just a person's fully subjective perception.
If you ask someone what the balance of a game is right now, even a game that's not been changed or updated since it's come out, it's in a state of flux a lot of times too. Like the way you may view the balance of a game right now versus the same patch of that same game in 6 months, a year, 2, 3, 5, 7, 10 years could be completely different. And each person also has their own perspective about like where the balance is as well. Like if lots of characters are good and you don't like those characters, then you may say the balance is really bad.
Instead of fixating so strongly on something so impossible to pin down, I believe designers should focus on much more important things when tuning a game. Communicating clearly with your audience, minimizing their frustrations quickly and thoughtfully, and keeping them engaged with lots of interesting decisions to make, and surprising them with cool new interactions each time they play. And most of all, as a dev, tuning a game or a player reacting to patch notes, don't panic. I want to thank AA for his hard work helping me write, execute, and edit this video that I've wanted to make for so long. I'd also like to thank Noah Sasso, Ultra David, Infilament, Mean Salty, and Ski Sonic for their help editing the script. The intent of this new Game Design Direct channel is to deliver more developer talk straight to you. So if you're interested in that, go ahead, click like and subscribe and all that stuff that you usually do on YouTube. If you're a game designer interested in
is the video dying on me?
Giving a talk in this format on this channel, contact me and we can discuss it. Thanks for watching.
It's complicated and difficult, especially because you know, even within only fighting games, there are so many different takes on this already happening, right? Games that patch very frequently, games that patch infrequently, games that have no patch cycle left. They're completely done. And you can see how all of those games have different approaches and philosophies to how they updated or patched once they were patching or they ever did patch. And also where the community views like the sentiment of all the characters in the game. And also you may be wondering like why some character is always really good or always really bad or whatever. Like it is very complicated. Balance is really a weird word and place to like end up because you could have the same version of the game and the balance of the game could be great to me, but really bad to you, or vice versa. And that could be without even a patch happening. You could be playing a version of the game right now that you think is really fun and good, and in 6 months of playing it, you think the version of this game is really bad. Just how it goes. And yeah, why, as an example, why a character like Mai has been so popular in Street Fighter versus like Blanca, even if they're like similar in power, like Blanca is ugly and people don't like to play him. It's not their fault that one of them is really hot and the other one just throws EX fan, so they're so powerful that there's nothing you can do about it. Like, I don't know, people make the obvious choice why you would play Mai over Blanca, you know? No dev is making updates to their game that they think are bad, not good for the health of the game, and really suck, and like are designed to make you mad and not have fun. They're doing their best to make changes that realistically they think are best for the vast majority of players, as many players as they can. And they're not always going to be right, but neither are players either. But there's no punishment for them. If I think some character on launch is the best character in the game and I'm bitching about them and it turns out they weren't very good, or vice versa, I think a character comes out way too weak and it turns out they're very strong, it doesn't matter if I'm wrong. But if a developer nerfs a character they think is too strong and it turns out they're really weak, buffs a character they think is really weak and it turns out that character was very powerful, that is much more impactful than me being wrong. Like, you don't know the power level of so many of these characters or these things that release. Like, sure, they may seem very powerful and they need to go, or sure, they may seem too weak on release, so they need to be buffed. But their actual power level, you usually don't know. It's going to take some time to figure them out is the answer usually, you know? Like, imagine being the devs for 2XKO right now and having to make a patch where you buff or nerf teamfight right now. On launch week, everybody's freaking out. So you're like, shit, I gotta nerf it. And then the event happened in France. It's weaker in some ways than people would have originally imagined. So then you're like, shit, well, I already submitted a bunch of nerfs. And then next week, people find some more broken stuff and it's like, shit, it's gotta be nerfed even more than I originally thought. And like, you know, it's like so complicated. That's another example. I brought this up yesterday, but Yasuo now is in a place in the game where like he probably could use a few quality of life buffs or changes. Maybe they're like slight buffs, but they would just make the character feel better to play. Me saying that, people were like, fuck you. I cannot believe you would suggest buffing Yasuo, you piece of shit. He's not, I think by most people's standards, a top 5 character anymore. It might be wrong to even give Yasuo anything, even if he maybe deserves it, because the perception of people would be very frustrated if you gave him anything positive. Do you see that? People freak out, man. They like panic at the sight of any buffs or nerfs. For most games, they change so frequently that the true reality of a patch is never solved. And if you plan a patch for 8 months, your understanding of it will be a lot different than if you plan a patch for 8 weeks or 8 years, you know?